Check out my second channel Bob Knob for daily memes. r/AskReddit. Users of Reddit, what is the worst thing your teacher has ever said in front of a class? I had an art teacher that got caught drinking. Apparently someone from the previous period told on her. The vice principal came into our class and told her to come with him. We all heard her yell, "They drove me to drink" from the hallway. 7th grade math teacher heard some 9th graders saying that he probably never gets any. Proceeded to explain to his 7th class that he ducks his 10 years younger wife a lot and that they're in an open polyamorous relationship. The morning after parents' night, boy in the class was talking over the lesson for the 100th time that term and the teacher says, "Johnny, this is exactly what I was saying to your mum last night." The class burst into laughter. The teacher went red at the implication and Johnny didn't talk over the lesson anymore. Worst thing and also best thing. History class. Kid punches the kid in front of him in the back of the head. Teacher sees this and says, "Now he's gonna punch you in the head and you're all gonna sit there and watch because there's nothing you can do about it." New year, new teacher, and his introduction was, "If you are loud I will hit you with the chalk." We all thought it was very funny, but the next day we learned what doom was because he never missed. Old guy history teacher told a student in my class to go home and slit his fat wrists. Edit. This same teacher would also state after the last class of the day, "Well, time to go home and beat the wife." He also once fired a gun in class. Although it was only an antique blunderbuss, the dude still fired a weapon in class. He told our whole English class quite seriously that for his 30th birthday he wanted 2 15-year-old girls to sit on his lap, and he even named them. I don't know what he was telling us for. Maybe he thought we would pressure them into doing it or something. She read out my name and looks at me and says, "Your parents named you this?" Not in my class, but one of my professors once said, "You look like you enjoy riding a bicycle without the saddle." Edit. Wow, this exploded. Just to clarify, it was said to a girl, so yeah, it was that inappropriate. In college. BTW. During English class we were watching Tomorrow When the War Began. Those of you who have seen the movie know they start the movie talking about sex. The teacher goes, "Sex is not that great. I have actually not had sex." He's a full 30-year-old man and says that to a bunch of 13-14-year-olds. Those were the days. Was your English teacher Coach Steve? During 1 year of high school in a bio class, the students were fooling around in class not doing their work and the young, had to be in her late 20s, professor yelled, "You all stop jerking off," then turned red as she realized what she had just said. You can only imagine how that went in a room full of 16-17-year-olds, lol. At the start of class our teacher just sat in silence for 5 minutes. We waited for him to begin. He then said, "You have just wasted 5 minutes of your life. You will never get that time back." A bit harsh on a class of 9-year-olds. I had a prof that had given us an in-class assignment. He was a shitty teacher and we were first year students, so we didn't finish it, and he told us to take it home and finish it, and when we were done to bring to me. Bring it to daddy. He was Greek and didn't know the context, but he was the head of the department, so we all held back our giggles and left. My sister once had a teacher tell the class that they had to write a paper on a famous Egyptian. You know, like Socrates. My sister was given in school suspension for disrupting class with her laughter. She appealed it, and in the appeal meeting with our mom and the principal, the teacher insisted that Socrates was Egyptian. The suspension was cancelled. My sister didn't have to write the paper, and as far as I know the teacher is still working at the same school as a teacher. At least half of you will be dead by the time you reach 20 years old to a class of 11-year-olds. Edit. Clarification. I once had a teacher between 4th-6th grade, not sure, say that about 1/4 of us would die before the end of high school. Statistically speaking, I've been lucky enough to not have any of my friends die yet. Edit. I forgot to mention that the reason why I say yet is because I'm only in sophomore year of high school. A student handed in a blank sheet during a test. Teacher took it and said, "Student's sheet is as much a virgin as every girl in this class." We were 13-14. He's done other stuff that made students uncomfortable, but we weren't taken seriously. The father of a classmate died in a motorcycle accident. He went into a corner too fast and crashed into a tree. A couple of days after the accident, which was the first day my classmate went to school again. Our physics teacher decided that it is a good moment to teach the speed doesn't kill you, acceleration does lesson, with the example of a motorcycle driving into a tree. I will be in your butt. Our band director was trying to fire us up for marching season, but he had never given a motivational speech before, so he ducked up all the intense parts and made them mildly sexual. I was in 5th grade and there were a few students who weren't getting great test scores. So during our lesson one day she calls out some of those students and basically paints a really morbid picture of what their future would supposedly be. She said they'd end up working at McDonald's for minimum wage, barely making enough to pay rent in a shitty apartment with no way to pay for food, electricity or anything else. I'll squeeze your balls, little man. It was an all-guys high school and the teacher was the headmaster / a Catholic brother / teacher. He was saying this as a follow-up to a kid acting up and being a wise ass. He says, "Oh, you think acting up means you have balls?" Kid says, "Yeah AMD." Then he responds to the kid with that gem. Everyone was weirded out and thought a line got crossed. My AP bio teacher was a little behind on the times and on the first day of school called a student daddy. Safe to say everybody busted out laughing and never let her live it down. Edit. I completely forgot about the time my history teacher called a kid in my class a one-pump chump. We still call him that in the locker room to this day. I go to an anger management school. Sometimes the teachers lose it. They once said, "Shut the duck up. This is why teachers give you dunce worksheets." Said that all we had to do to understand a reading was to try harder. This immediately after someone who was visually impaired told her that no accommodations had been provided. So trying harder was kind of out of the realm of possibility. We all lost a lot of respect for that teacher that night. Freshman year in high school, a classmate called someone a chode in gym class. The gym teacher asked him what that means and the student explained a chode is a good student. Next day, the teacher welcomed the class by saying, "Good morning chodes." Honestly, at 13/14 that's about as funny as it gets. Had an English sub. He was clearly in a hungover state taking naps on an hourly basis. When he is awake he's not being a good teacher. He would cut openly in front of the class, ask us what we were doing. We didn't know. And one time he was hitting on some freshman girl loud enough for his flirts to be heard by the whole class. He was later removed for unknown reasons. Our yoga instructor. Fat parents give birth to elephants. I once had a substitute teacher for my health class and he went on this long rant about how rape can be justified. So many people complained about him. Recursion is better than sex. 9th grade C++ teacher going through a rough divorce. You were being taught C++ in 9th grade? God, I went to the wrong school. While asking everyone in the class what they'd like to study at uni, hyping up everyone so they could help us pick our year 11/12 courses, my year's welfare advisor stopped at me and out loud in front of the class told me I am not cut out for uni and maybe a more attainable goal would be like a cleaning lady. Jokes on you Timmy, I start next week. Edit note. Just to specify, this is definitely no hate on cleaners. You guys are essential and I have total respect for the profession. It's a tough job. I was offended by the calling out about university more than anything. Plus, who says you can't be a cleaner and have a degree? You absolutely can. Teach was using an example to illustrate a concept. He was a very nice, bubbly man. We all liked him. He points at a random student and says, for example, "Bob, imagine you're adopted." About half the class cringed as they knew what Bob was about to say. I am adopted. You could see the gears turning in the poor teacher's mind. Omgaduck, I can't say sorry because that implies that being adopted is bad. Omgaduck. The silence was palpable as he tried to think of something to say. He eventually just turned to another kid. Are you adopted? No, okay, so imagine Steven is adopted, lol, poor guy. I had a religion teacher in high school named Mr. Wen, who was working on becoming a Jesuit priest, and was a really cool guy. He always had a smile on his face and did his best to make class a fun experience for everyone. There was a kid in my class who was a really annoying smartass, but Mr. Wen was always really patient with him, until one day he pushed him too far. I forgot exactly what the kid said, but it definitely crossed the line. Mr. Wen slammed his fists on his desk and shouted, "Why can't you ever shut the duck up? He then picked up his stapler and chucked it at the kid, missing his head by a few inches and leaving a huge dent in the wall, and then stormed out into the hallway. I had never seen a teacher blow up like that, and I definitely never expected it from him. I had a teacher when I was 13-14 years old that said to a girl of the class she was going to end up prostituting in front of the whole class. Same teacher said to another girl that she was going to end up working at McDonald's if she kept having bad grades. Same teacher told the whole class our parents were ungrateful to the pedagogic team that takes care of their children because she didn't receive any chocolates for Christmas. His name? Harry Balls. No, really. He was a substitute teacher who wrote his name on the board and said, "I will give you 3 minutes to laugh, but then we gotta get to work." Double quote. Calling me her dog there, and I am a boy. She ate dog food when pregnant because she was craving it, and the doctor said it was okay to. She would stick pins in her baby brother's feet to make him cry. When the brother was older and wanted to play, she would lock him in the sewers. That the Virgin Mary was called that because she wasn't married. Nothing to do with not having had sex. Apparently, she was our religious studies teacher. The 12th of September, 2001. We should just carpet bomb all of the towel heads in that whole desert and be done with this. My European history teacher had a cracker of an English teacher back in the day. She clearly considered herself a bit of a MILF. Lots of fake tan and borderline inappropriate clothes. She was quite funny and brutally honest. I was going through my edgy teen years. We got along pretty well. She led a colorful life and liked to tell stories that really weren't for school hours. Like how one time she went on a date with a guy who took her on a river booze cruise. She decided after a few drinks that her date was lame and left him to hook up with another guest on the boat, leaving him on his own. Forced to watch her slitting about 4 hours until the boat docked again. The story that made me question exactly how much I liked her was some largely uneventful but similar anecdote that ended with her dumping the guy. He showed up at her work to beg her to take him back, making a big scene which annoyed her enough that she basically humiliated him on the spot, which TBH is fair enough. Never do this to someone at work. It's scummy behavior. But then, she said it was the straw that broke the camel's back. So he jumped in front of a train, and she laughed. She seemed to think it was funny this guy killed himself, at least partly because of her, and she expected us to laugh too. No one did. Needless to say, my estimation of her went way down. Think it hit rock bottom when I heard she apparently slept with a student at my prom a few years after. My teacher once said we'll finally be able to start learning something after all these Jewish holidays are over. A teacher once got fired because at the end of a workshop class she asked all the black students in the class to stand up, told them that they would be staying behind to clean the workshop after class, and then dismissed all the white students. Assembly in front of the whole school, ages 3 and up. Let it slip that Santa isn't real. Edit. For people wondering if they went to my school, it was a small religious school in Wales. I suck at math. Dyscalculia. I had to go up and solve problem on the whiteboard. Somehow got it right. Whoa. Even a blind squirrel can find a nut once in a while. WTF lady. I hated her and school in general. She called me an escapist for missing school and homework due to jaundice in 7th grade. I was 13. 7th grade. My homeroom teacher was Mr. Baker. I lived in a neighborhood a few blocks away from a park, and I was finally old enough to get to walk there myself. I was overweight and I had started walking there almost every day. I would walk the track for hours and then walk back home. It was a positive for me and would have probably led to healthier choices down the line. One day during free period he called out my name in front of my entire homeroom. Kids I'd known my whole life plus a few new people. He told me that he had seen me walking down the road. Laughing now, he said that he had to wait 10 minutes for me to move out of the way because I was blocking half the road. Most of the class laughed with him. I had to sit there, holding everything in until the bell rang. Then I went to the bathroom and sobbed. I never walked to the park again. I was afraid to leave my house for a really long time. That shit was so uncool and ducked me up for a long time. People really suck for absolutely no reason, and it's just a thing we have to accept, and I hate it. My history teacher made a joke about Jews. I live in Germany. Edit. I mean joke in a serious way. In high school, on the first day of class, My calculus teacher told the whole class I'm being forced to teach calculus and don't want to teach it, so here we are. That ruined the respect and morale of the class for the whole school year. Many students just didn't do homework and barely worked, yet it was an easy A for those that did the work, in what should have been a hard class. I was a first year high school teacher teaching a subject I loved, but I was honestly in over my head. The kids were pretty understanding about my inexperience and I had a sarcastic, self-deprecating sense of humor that they seemed to enjoy. I borrowed a lab room onelay. The pull-down screen in that room had a rope cord tied to the handle for raising and lowering it. As I finished explaining a new concept, I teach chemistry and we were using some tricky math that day, and set the kids to practice. I raised the screen and saw that someone in another period had tied the cord into a noose, and so I, the so-called responsible adult in a room of 17-year-olds, said, "And here's a noose for you, in case you want to kill yourself after all that." Most of the kids laughed, but I was mortified and immediately apologized. Almost a decade later I'm still friendly with some of the students who were in that period and they won't let me live it down. One of them tells me that's the moment I became her favorite teacher. Thank God no one reported me to the principal, but they would have been absolutely right to do so. Whoa, you made it to the end? You're a ducking beast. I'll cut you a deal. Smash like and subscribe for more curated content, bruh. It's free and that's a great price.